Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in PR in Paris? Well, today we talk to Damien, who is also born and raised in France. We talk all about what it's like to work with big brands, his poetry, storytelling, and much more in this fascinating episode. So welcome to the show, Damien.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
We have so many friends in common. Paris is a village. This comes up over and over again, and I'm just really excited to share your story today.
Thank you so much. Yes, we do have some friends in common, and it's always really nice to connect and talk together. So I'm really excited.
So I thought you were American because your incredible accent, but you actually grew up in France. Tell us where you're from.
Oh my goodness, yes, and you're always so nice about it. So I grew up in the suburbs of Paris, so 50 kilometers away from Paris, in a little village called Milly-la-Forêt. So usually people know it because it was where Jean Cocteau, you know Jean Cocteau, the artist, famously lived for the last 18 years of his life. And so it's a really cultural area, which I really love, but it was also really small. So I was excited, especially being a creative. I think I was excited to move on to bigger, better things. And that's why I settled in Paris when I was 19 years old.
Wow, yeah.
And I'm 30 now. So it's been a while.
Oh my goodness. Isn't that like for most French people, they're like, okay, I got to get a job. We're all moving to Paris.
Yeah, honestly, it was like that. And I think with the friends that I grew up with, it was always like that. We always knew. I think also I was sort of like the only one kind of really nostalgic about it and being like, oh my gosh, but I want to go to Paris and live my life. But at the same time, I feel so attached to, my hometown. So I think I was the only one sort of like trying to do both. But with all of my friends growing up, everybody just wanted to, leave.
Yeah, I think that's typical in any country, in any small town. You're like, I want to leave. I want to do new things. But Paris is such a great place to explore what you do.
Yeah, right. And I think also, from my personal experience, I'm a queer person, obviously. And so definitely the open-mindedness of, a bigger city felt safer to me in a way. And I think it also felt safer for me to explore my creative life. So that's also part of it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That totally makes sense. And do you remember the first moment you realized when storytelling would be central to your life? I mean, so much of what you do is about storytelling.
Yeah, it's sort of like what I say, especially when I go to a party and people ask me what I do. I'm like, I'm a storyteller. And they're like, what is that? But then at the same time, I like how it can provoke conversations. And I think the first time I really realized was not really, I didn't really know that existed as a job yet, but I think definitely I grew up watching, music videos and TV shows, and I was always so interested in clothing, telling a story. So, for example, my favorite show is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Shout out to all of my 90s babies here. So I remember being so fascinated by how they would use, fashion as a way to express a character going through, different things in their lives or growing up or, becoming more confident and things like that. So I think that was a big part of that. And also music videos. I'm a huge Britney fan. And definitely she used fashion as a way to tell stories in her music videos and her performances. And so I think I was always drawn to that, parallel between we're telling stories, but we're also telling it in a fun way and expressing ourselves. So to me, that's what storytelling is also. So yeah.
Definitely. I'm a huge Britney fan too. Shout out to Britney if she's listening.
Oh my gosh, you have to be. If you're not, I'm just,
You're
leaving.
signing off right now.
Yeah, exactly. You're on your own.
So, how do you see creativity as a way of survival versus a way of expression?
Oh my goodness, that's a good question. I feel like I'm in therapy right now. I think to me it's sort of like it's different stages of creativity. So I think the first stage definitely would be survival because again, being a queer person in, the 2000s in my little tiny village in France, I think could be difficult because I had, different taste or I had, different ways of expressing myself and it wasn't really accepted in a way. I was made fun of a lot or bullied. So I think it was definitely a way for me to have a safe space. And I grew up as an only child. So thankfully, it really helped me because I always was sort of like in my own world. And creativity was always a part of that because I was always, creating different worlds or creating new games or, just having fun on my own and like creating those worlds and those imaginary friends and, those situations. And I think it really helped me. And then later on in life, I started to realize that if I wanted to sort of like turn trash into gold and sort of like make sense of some things that happened in my childhood or in my teenage years and sort of like use all of that emotion to create something, it would also be very beneficial for me and make me feel better. So that's when creativity, especially through writing, helped a lot. And now it's sort of like my lifeline. I make sense of everything that happens in my life, good or bad, through writing. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think so many people have gone through trauma or bullying and things like that. Like, art, creativity has become such an outlet and a way to like heal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the older you become, like the more mature you become, I think you realize that it's your superpower in a way. That's what I say always. In a way, I'm grateful for everything that I've been through, but I'm also super grateful that I have this outlet, as you said, and this tool that I can use to feel better, make sense of things, grow as a person, and heal, as you said, as it's very important.
So, talk a little bit about what it's been like working in PR in Paris, fashion, luxury. You worked with some really big brands like
Yeah.
Jaguar, UGG, Barcelona Fashion Week. Like, tell us what it's like. I think so many people are curious.
Oh my goodness. So I feel like it's not what you expect. Definitely, I think we all, and I was the first person, guilty of this when you look at The Devil Wears Prada or Gossip Girl or now Emily in Paris, you sort of have like this vision of what PR is. It's definitely a lot of hard work. I would say that because you might think that it's just going to parties and drinking champagne and meeting cool people, and it is part of that, but it's also a lot of long hours, a lot of sacrifices, a lot of, spreading yourself thin and trying to make everything work and everyone happy. But I will say that it definitely helped a lot because it allowed me to meet so many amazing people, and I love being surrounded by what I call my creative community and my peers, and definitely it allowed me to do that. And I'm so thankful because I think it's such a hard job and it's still a job that I do. I'm a freelancer, so I still do PR, but I'm so happy that now I get to do it on my own terms and work with the clients that I want to work with and create teams around me that I love to work with. So yeah, definitely it's a tough job. If you want to get into this industry, it's definitely hard. And I think it's harder than ever now, but I love it. It's part of who I am.
And walk us through what a day looks like working in that industry. Like, say you're working for a brand, like you have to figure out what they want and figure out how to get it out to the world. Like, talk a little bit about that.
It's a lot of conversations. So I love to talk, as you know. So I think it's easier for me because I love conversations. I love collaboration. It's definitely a lot of that. It's never you're on your own and you make decisions and then you apply them to whatever clients you have. It's really a lot about sitting down and, asking, okay, what do you need? What do you want? What's your next launch? How do you want to spread this message? How can we work together? And so it's a lot of conversations. I will say that you don't really have a, typical day. It's always changing. It's meetings and it's a lot of emails and it's a lot of phone calls and just again trying to make sure that, you help your client, but also you're disappearing a little bit behind them as well because it's their message, it's their brand, it's their baby. A lot of clients obviously invest a lot of money, a lot of passion and effort. And so you're really here to make them shine and to make sure that their message is heard. And that's something that I love, definitely. But it's ever changing. It's always different. And that's what I enjoy the most because one day you can just be at the office or at home working the whole day. And then the next you can be going to events or meeting people, journalists, stylists, influencers. You can work on strategies and then, it's just always different. So that's something that I definitely enjoy because I get bored really easily. And so I like an environment that really stimulates me. And it's definitely that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like you said, it's always changing. And after working in the industry for 20 years, like how has PR really changed over time?
Oh my goodness, it's changed a lot. So, I've been working in PR for close to 10 years now. So it's really, I think when I first started, first of all, I want to say this to all of the youngsters listening. And that's what I tell my students as well when I'm teaching is that I started in this industry and I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to book a courier. I didn't know how to answer the phone. I didn't know how to do anything. And so definitely I had to learn, right away what it was like. But when I first started, I think influencers definitely, it was just the beginning and it was sort of like starting to emerge and it was a sort of like not a struggle, but I think we're a little bit afraid of how it would change the landscape of the industry. Now it's completely, normalized and it's part of it. So I think it's changed so much, honestly. And now with obviously AI, it's gonna be a whole different thing. Now you have AI influencers. It's completely different. I think it's what I like as well about this industry is that it changes so fast and it's a mirror to society. So obviously, as society changes, for better or for worse, our industry changes as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm mirror to society. I like that. And do
Yeah.
you feel like brands now prefer influencers over like celebrities?
Oh, I think it depends. Obviously, it really depends on the goal that you have, the launch that you have, the money that you're willing to invest. Because obviously, celebrities and VIPs, it's gonna sometimes cost more because I think if you compare it to influencers, you have so many different type of influencers. You can work with really niche influencers. And I would say that with influencers, even though it's getting more and more difficult, you can still work a lot with organic content and earned content as opposed to celebrities where, 99% of the time is going to be paid activations. So I think it really depends. I always tell my clients that you shouldn't you should look at what everybody else is doing, but you shouldn't necessarily try and emulate or copy that. And you should always try and stay true to what the brand is. That's the most important thing. But I don't know. It's a really like that could be a that could be a topic for an hour-long
Yeah,
podcast, really.
especially with
Yeah.
these AI celebrities too, or are
Oh my gosh.
influencers, are they celebrities? Are they one and the same, you know? Like
That, yeah, that gives me a lot of anxiety if I'm honest. And when you look at other industries like the music industry, for example, now they also have AI artists. And you're like, wait a minute, you're not even paying real artists enough. And now you're putting all of that money into creating those fake, profiles. Like it's really insane when you think about it.
definitely. Like you said, the world is changing really quick and we just don't know what's going to happen with any of this. And so, how
Oh
is
my
PR
gosh.
different in France versus America, for example?
Ooh, well, I think it's more of a perception thing. I don't know if it's really true, but I will say that and it's so funny. I feel like we have this image in France where everybody thinks we're just like we have 3 hour long lunches and we're always drinking and we're always like having fun and sitting on a terrace and you're like, it's not really like that. But definitely compared to Americans, I feel like they're hustling more in a way, and it's very like bam, 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 like meeting from meeting from meeting from meeting. And I think with us, we take a little bit more time. And I think also maybe we're a little bit more genuine. And I say this in the best way. I love my American clients. I'm not trying to argue, but I will say that, what they say about the difference between French people and American people is that we are, I think, a little bit tougher at the beginning to let you in. But then when you're in, we really consider you to be, someone that we trust and someone that we could be friends with, as opposed to I think Americans where they're always like, "Oh my gosh, I love you so much" within 30 seconds of meeting you, but then maybe it's a more superficial relationship. So I think that would be the main difference. And personally, I think I'm more American in the way that I want to do things all the time. I'm very willing to build things from the ground up and do a lot of different things. But then my French side is that I don't like superficial relationships. So I will ask you like 2 minutes into meeting you, I will ask you what your biggest trauma is. Like that's who I am. Like I love to get into the nitty gritty. I love to have deep conversations because otherwise I'm not stimulated. So that would be, I think, the main difference. But I love American people and I get along so well with them. It's just sometimes the French comes out.
Yeah. Well, they always say the French are like coconuts, like that hard shell, but once you're in, it's all soft and nice. And then Americans are like peaches, we're really soft on the outside, but the inside there's this hard core that you don't really get in.
Wait, I love that. That's so fun. And that
Yeah.
makes me hungry.
Yeah, that's how it was explained to me when I first moved here because I'm like, everybody hates me. But you're like, no, French
Oh my
people, it just
gosh,
takes a minute,
no.
like let
Yeah, I
them get
think
to know
it's a
you.
little harder to, I think it's a tougher nut to crack at the beginning, but then once you're in, like you're really in. So,
Definitely. So, how does your approach to storytelling change when you're writing poetry versus working with like a luxury brand, for example?
mm. Well, when I write poetry, I'm the face of it. So that really changes everything because you're putting everything on the line. I try not to think about that too much, but my poetry is very personal and I talk about real feelings. I talk about real things. It's not marketing, it's really emotional. It's tied to my story, what I've been through, what I am going through, and it's a way for me to make sense of things in more of a musical way because I love to play with words and sounds. So I think that would be the main difference.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Do you feel like you have more freedom in personal work or do constraints actually fuel your creativity?
Mm. I'm a very free person in general, I think. I don't like being told what to do. And so I think just in general in my life and in my work, even when I'm working with clients, I think usually I'm still very free. I don't have a lot of constraints. At least I don't feel like that. But it's true that when it comes to your personal projects, obviously you're behind it, you're the face of it, it's your idea, so it's completely different. But I do feel very free, sometimes I think too free when I'm writing. And so I think when you're writing, it's also important to think a little bit. It doesn't have to be, your whole point, but I think it's important to think about being universal. And that's what I try to do as well with poetry. So, yeah.
I love that. And how do you protect your creative voice while working with commercial clients?
Ooh. Well, I think the positive thing when you're freelancing, and I've been freelancing for a while now, is that a lot of clients come to you and they know your voice already. So they want to work with you because of that. So they're not going to say, oh, no, not like that, because that's the reason why they came to you in the first place. So that's one thing. And then when I get in touch with people and I sort of like introduce my work and everything, I like my work to speak for itself. So, and I don't like changing myself for a client. So I understand that it sounds really privileged, but I think it's important now, especially my generation and the generation after that. And I'm not even going to talk about the next generation that's coming up. I think we're really attached to our values and we don't want to work with people that get in the way of that. And so I try and protect my voice as much as possible and be as ethical as possible and to be as aligned with my values as possible. And I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I wasn't. So
Yeah, no,
I'm very
you
lucky.
are very lucky. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why people are choosing you. It's kind of like choosing me as a photographer. They're like, we like your style. It's the same for
Exactly.
you with
Yeah.
writing and
Yeah.
what you're doing with PR. It's your style.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk more about your own personal writing. I want to
Oh my
talk more
gosh.
about Cœur Méteor. I hope I said that right.
Yes, perfect. So much better than when you rehearsed
Yeah.
it earlier.
So talk about this writing. Was it hard to publish such a personal work?
Yeah, it was, but now that I think about it, I feel like I really went for it. And I released it last year, so it feels like lifetimes ago. But honestly, I just wanted to get it out there. That was the main thing. I had been writing poetry for a very, very long, long time, ever since I was a kid, basically. And so I really wanted it to take physical form, which is why I worked on a fanzine and why I wanted it to be, this sort of like little book, little magazine, with pictures inside. So I worked with two friends of mine, Olivia and Marivan, and we shot pictures together. And when I tell you I'm the face of it, I'm literally the face of it because I'm in the pictures. I'm modeling. Well, not modeling, but I'm the subject of the pictures. So I think that was scarier than the writing in a way.
Definitely.
Um, because, I'm not a model. So I think that was the scariest part. But yeah, I mean, I just went to find a home for all of this poetry, and I didn't want to wait for anybody's validation, and I didn't want to wait for a book deal. So I was like, I'll just do it myself,
I love
which is what
that.
I did.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And for listeners who don't know what a fanzine is versus a zine versus a magazine, can you explain?
Oh my goodness. So for me, it was more of a format thing. Zines are really things that when you think about it, are done really DIY, so do it yourself. So I did a lot of it myself, and I did work with someone, a friend of mine called Steven, for the graphic design. But it's a very DIY approach to things. So it was not a professional thing. It was very like spur of the moment. Let's do it. I'm writing, and let's take some pictures, and then let's put everything together and create this object. So that's what a fanzine is about. And also, I'm, as you know, really inspired by pop culture and fan culture, and I love pop music. I love pop culture. So there was definitely also this element of I really wanted to go back to this nostalgic feeling of me collecting magazines and having, my little pictures and my little objects that I loved, and I really wanted to have a life of its own. So that's why I chose that format.
I love that. And why poetry? Why not memoir or just writing in general?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think poetry is something that can be seen as simplistic or on the other hand, maybe really elitist. And I really wanted um, to get away from that. I really wanted something that could speak to people. And poetry in itself, to me, is a genre that is really influenced by emotions. And I'm a very emotional person. I'm a Pisces, and it's a way to express myself that I've used for a long time, and I really wanted to put that into the world. And yeah, I write other things, but I really felt comfortable this time around to just share that because I felt that it was easy. It was very like, people could just like pick and choose what they loved, and it was not as big as a commitment as another genre. So that's also why I picked it. And I love the musicality of it. I think in another life, maybe I was a pop star. And so it was my way of sort of like making a little album, with poetry and songs, in a way.
An album, yeah, because yeah, like you said, with poetry, you can rhyme, you can play with words more. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's like music.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely influenced by music. I love music. I listen to music maybe 6 to 7 hours a day. And I grew up listening to music a lot with my parents and my grandmothers. So it's definitely a project that was influenced by music. And with Cœur Météor, which is the first one of the trilogy, I also envisioned the object as a vinyl. So you have two sides. You have side A and side B, just like a music object. And so you read the first side, and then you have to flip it around, just like a vinyl, to read the rest. So it's definitely influenced by music.
That's so fun. So, talk a little bit about your celestial feeling. You have meteor, you have moon for your second book. What draws
Yeah.
you to the cosmic imagery?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I'm a very spiritual person, and that's usually something that you wouldn't think when you see me. But I'm a very spiritual person. I love astrology. I love looking at the sky, looking at the stars, and I've always loved that. And so I think for me, I really liked this idea of something that felt, universal. And so that's why I think I have such a connection with it, especially in my poetry. The second one, so Cœur de Lune, which is the second installment of the trilogy, was heavily influenced by my grandmother who passed 2 years ago. And I think it's also a way for me to connect with her and to sort of like feel that she's a part of everything that I do and a part of everything in the world. So that whenever I look at the sky or, a tree or, whatever, I'm like, she's there. She's watching me. So I think, yeah,
That's really
that's
beautiful.
why.
I love that. It's such a great way to honor her. And, like you said, like keep her in your life in so many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I try, and I think also, um, we all have those people in our lives that really impacted us, for better, for worse. For her, it was definitely for the better. And she was such a big influence in my life, and she still is. And so I think, as I said, poetry is emotional, so why not tie this in with, people that I really, really love?
And would you mind reading us a little bit from one of your books?
Mon soleil brille trop fort, tu fermes les yeux. On s'en est fait du tort, tous les deux. Mes bulles bleues sont des bouteilles à la mer, des mots qui s'en vont et jamais ne reviennent. Baga chaque doigt, ancra chaque port, tu perds le nord, moi je me noie. Sur le bord, à mon sort, c'est une fin en soi.
Oh my gosh, that gave me chills. It's so good.
Really?
And your reading voice, you should be doing audiobooks.
Oh my gosh, I want to. That could be a project.
Okay, so
Sign me up.
you have to translate for our English listeners.
Yes. So can I just talk about like the general
Yeah,
idea
yeah, for
or
sure.
yeah. Okay, so it's a poem that I wrote about a former friend of mine. Because I'm also very inspired by friend breakups
Oh,
and not just, relationships with former lovers. I think former friends are definitely important. as well. So it's a poem that I wrote for him, and it's basically about how he was sort of like the moon to my sun, and maybe I was shining a little too brightly for him, and that's why he left. And it's also talking a little bit about how I tried reaching out, and which is why I talk about blue bubbles. The blue bubbles are the messages, like iMessage, you know?
Hmm.
That's why I talk about blue
Oh, I like
bubbles.
that.
And yeah, I say that, those words went and never came back to me because he never replied. And then I also talk about rings on his fingers because he wears a lot of rings. And I talk about how those rings are sort of like anchors, but we're not in the same port anymore. So I think it was important for me to talk about this because it's definitely a relationship that impacted me a lot. And I needed to sort of like, get this feeling out. And the poem is called The Stranger because that's what he is now. But I think it's interesting because obviously we're friends. So it's also about how obviously when you meet someone and you connect with them and they become part of your life, when they're not here anymore, you suddenly go back to what you were once, you go back to what you were before you met them,
Hmm.
strangers.
I
So
like
I
that.
think it's always, yeah, I think it's always very hard to think about that because you meet someone and you're like, oh my gosh, they're part of my life. And then suddenly they're not. And so you go back to being strangers, but you're changed by that relationship. So you
Hmm.
have to carry that with you. And I think expressing it through writing is a good way to, again, make sense of it in a way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't talk about friend breakups. Like it's always romantic and things like that. But yeah, those friend breakups can be just as hard.
Oh my gosh, they can be harder because I think with a friend, you never picture the end. You never envision it to end.
It's so true.
Whereas with a lover, you're like, oh my gosh, we could break up. Like there could be different things. There could be different reasons or. But with a friend, you're never like, oh, we're gonna be friends for 2 years.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, as someone who's had friend breakups too, you always think, "Oh, wait, what? Like, no, this we were going to be in each other's
Yeah.
lives forever." So I think that's really beautiful to write about.
Thank you.
So you also are a teacher. Talk a little bit
Yes.
about what would you want your students to most unlearn about communications today?
Ooh, unlearn? What? Um, well, what I try to instill in them is confidence and hope. I know that sounds really cheesy, but my favorite teachers growing up and also when I was a little older, I think we're not necessarily people that I remember a lot of their classes, but I remember their values. And I think to me that's the most important. So what I try to get them to unlearn is maybe self-doubt. I know that sounds really lame, but I think, yeah, self-doubt and also that maybe to work in certain industries, you have to either change yourself or you have to put up with things you shouldn't. So toxic environments, toxic relationships, toxic bosses. I tell them you don't have to put up with that. And I get that it's difficult because when you're first starting out, and I was guilty of this as well, when you first start out, you want to create your own path, you want to march to the beat of your own drum, but then you know that you have to work for it and you need help and you need to work and to advance your career. And so it can be really scary to say no or to walk away from difficult situations. But I always tell them that they need to work hard. Yes, that's a given, but they don't have to put up with everything.
Yeah, I think and I think the self doubt thing is so important too, because I think, especially young people, I mean, all of us included, we doubt ourselves so much in the beginning and we put up with a lot more than we should. And I feel like, especially in the fashion industry or in PR, there can be like a lot of
Hmm.
narcissistic people. So, yeah,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to put up with a lot.
Yeah, I think it's hard. And I think when you're sort of like building your own confidence, I think it's really easy for certain people to get in your head And yeah, I try to tell them, listen to people that matter. So listen to your loved ones, people who have your best interest at heart. Try and find mentors. I think mentors are really important. I'm very fortunate to have a few of them myself, and I think it's important to have that person you can call and say, "What do you think about this? Should I go for it?" Or "I got this job offer. What do you think?" Or "Where should I pivot?" Things like that. I think it's important to have people who have your best interests at heart, but don't listen to everybody.
Yeah, yeah, you have to pick and choose for sure.
Yeah,
And what do you
yeah.
think young creatives today struggle with the most?
Ooh, well, I think definitely the environment that we live in, the world that we live in right now is so unstable that it can be detrimental to your creativity because I think we all suffer from anxiety and also attention disorders. And I think with everything that's happening in the world right now, it can really put pressure on your creativity because, it's harder to make money, it's harder to have a stable situation, it's harder to make your way into this world. And so sometimes being creative is going to be the last thing on your list as opposed to maybe one of the first ones. So I think that's definitely a struggle. And that's why I try when, I'm teaching or mentoring, I try to sort of like give a little bit of hope.
Yeah, that's something we all need right now. Like you said,
Oh, for
it's
sure.
harder than ever to be in the creative industry because
Yeah.
the world's changing fast. There's no stability, AI. So yeah,
Yeah.
give some hope. And I always like to ask all my guests, how would you define creativity in your own words?
Oh, I think creativity is a way to see the world and also a way to express yourself. So it's how you look at the world, it's how you can use everything that you want as a tool to be more creative, to get inspiration from. And it's also a way to maybe make sense of your life, your emotions, your traumas, your relationships. So, yeah, that's how I would define it.
Well, I think that is a beautiful note to end on. And where can people connect with you, buy your books, and learn more?
So you can follow me on Instagram. It's Damien Testu, so DAMIENTSTU. And then you can just look for my work online. I'm sold in a few bookshops in Paris. So if you'd like to maybe check it out. And then also my podcast is called Testu, and it's available on Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's in French. Sorry for all of my English speaking people. And season 2 is coming in February.
Oh, fantastic. Well, maybe some of our listeners want to learn French. It's a fun way to learn.
Yes, please. I would love to.
Well, thanks so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.